clarity and confusion, truth and deception, obedience and disobedience. This book has some fascinating scenes diving into those themes. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk book review for C.S. Lewis's The Silver Chair. Now, like I say when I open these Chronicles of Narnia videos, whether this book is the 4th book you read or the 6th book you read depends on the choice you make in the reading, because there's 2 ways you could go. See, C.S. Lewis wrote them in a certain order. So he wrote the first 4 books. The Silver Chair was the 4th book that he wrote, followed by 2 prequels, and then the final book. But if you read it chronologically, The Silver Chair is the 6th book and the second to last. You can read it in any order you want. If you read it in the order C.S. Lewis wrote it in, you can really see that, yeah, that's truly the order he wrote it in. But if you read it chronologically, it's still really cool just to see in order as these things happen. So I think either reading of it is just fine. If you're a first-time reader, I'd probably say read it the order C.S. Lewis wrote it in. But I got a big, cool set that has all the books in chronological order. That's the way I've been doing it this time. And it is kind of fun to go through the story chronologically. So now where I'm at, for me, the 6th book, The Silver Chair. Now, like I said, this book is fascinating. It takes an interesting look at clarity and confusion. It takes an interesting look at obedience and disobedience, which the disobedience does a great job throwing the confusion into it and how they listened to confusion rather than to the clarity that they were given. And the deceit of the Green Lady, the witch of the same type of like the White Witch. As I'm going through and reading this book has kind of an interesting symmetry because it opens on the top of the highest mountain that is outside of the world in Aslan's country. Like, it's so high, it's up above the world. And one of the big, huge confrontation scenes takes place deep under the earth. So up on the mountain, the air is clear, their mind is clear, and down under the earth, the air is thick, and it's enchanted with a magic, and their minds are confused. So the symmetry of where this book starts and where we finally get into like the climax of the story, to me, that's a very interesting thing to take a look at. Because the way this book opens, each one kind of has a unique way of bringing our sons of Adam and our daughters of Eve into Narnia. This one's unique way was they asked. Unlike the other times, this time they were simply asking Aslan, can we come to your world? So we have Eustace, who was in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and that was his first exposure to the world and coming into the realm of Narnia. And so now we find he goes to this school called the Experiment House, which is like a real crazy modern school that is, it's just mean. Like, when you read the stories of it, it's just full of mean people. They encourage that meanness. It's just full of the worst kind of people. And so you have our new character, Jill Pole, and she's constantly being bullied. And Eustace kind of was part of that until he went to Narnia, and now he's a changed person. And so now he finds Jill crying as she's trying to hide from these bullies. And so he goes, well, why don't we ask Aslan if we could go to Narnia? So he takes some time to explain what an Aslan is and what a Narnia is. And you know, she's like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. But if it gets me away from these bullies, yeah, sure. Let's do what you say. And so, you know, at first she's like, so what, do we draw a circle and perform some spells? And Eustace goes, no. Aslan does not like the idea of that stuff at all. And the idea of controlling him sounds kind of ridiculous. I think we should just simply ask him. And so they turn and face the east, and they just say, Aslan, 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 over and over again, really just asking, can we please come into Narnia? Can we please come to your country? And guess what? Aslan opens the door and allows them in. When the bullies are chasing them, they literally open a door, but Aslan let that be the gateway into his country. Not just Narnia, but Aslan's country, where we were at the end of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, where they sailed to the end of the world and saw Aslan's country, the land beyond the sun, where the mountains were so high, either they couldn't see the tops of them or they were just totally outside the known world. And so they end up on the top of the tallest mountain outside the known world. I mean, imagine it. They go from an autumn cold weather area into bright, beautiful blue sky and summer and green and lush and beautiful and quiet. And then Jill just becomes a great big jerk because Eustace looks over the cliff and they are so high, it's kind of freaking him out a little bit. So she decides to show off how great she is and parades herself on the edge of the cliff and freaks out internally, but is trying to keep it together because she's got to be better than Eustace. And her weird attitude is he tries to pull her back, and then in the process he falls. Aslan rushes out and literally blows him into Narnia, saving his life. And this leads to the most fascinating scene, or one of the most fascinating scenes, because when Jill meets Aslan for the first time, she's feeling ashamed because of what happened with Eustace. She's incredibly thirsty, and here's Aslan sitting by this fresh water source, and he's like, come and drink. And she's like, could you go away? Because, she's like intimidated by the presence of this gigantic lion. I'd be intimidated too. It's a lion, and it's not just a lion, it's the lion. So there's kind of this holy awe just emanating off of him, and so I can understand her feelings there. But this scene is so interesting because it's a scene of trust. It's her learning who Aslan really is and learning how to trust him. The other incredible thing about this scene is Aslan revealing that he knows her. He reveals this when he says he called her into Narnia. She goes, well, that can't really be possible because Eustace taught me this name and told us to ask the name if we could go into Narnia. Like, she couldn't even remember the name she was taught in that moment. It was such a foreign name to her. But Aslan says, nope, you would not have been calling out to me unless I had first been calling out to you. What's incredible about that revelation is it shows long before Jill ever entered Narnia, Aslan knew her completely. It shows the fact that when she was calling out to him because Eustace taught her the name Aslan, that was no accident. It was no accident that Eustace stumbled upon where she was hiding. It was no accident that she was where she needed to be at just that right time. It was no accident because Aslan had been calling out to her. And to me, that's just a perfect illustration of right now how God is calling out to you and me. So here they are on the top of this high mountain in perfect clarity. And what does Aslan do? He gives her 4 signs. He gives her a mission and gives her 4 signs by which she will know that they are on track and will complete this mission. And when he gives her these 4 signs, he says something very, very interesting to her. He says this, here on the mountain, I have spoken to you clearly. I will not often do so down in Narnia. Here on the mountain, the air is clear and your mind is clear. As you drop down into Narnia, the air will thicken. Take great care that it does not confuse your mind. And the signs which you have learned there will not look at all as you expect them to look when you meet them there. But what's the answer that Aslan is giving her? Recite the signs. He made her stay there with him until she could repeat them flawlessly. He said, now say them in the morning when you wake up, say them at night when you go to bed, recite them as often as you can. Keep those signs fresh and alive in your heart because the air is going to thicken. And when the air thickens, things are going to get confusing. But if you continue to recite the signs and you keep that alive in your heart, you will have your marching orders. You will know, even in the most confusing times, what it is you're looking for. But don't let that confusion take the signs out of your heart. Don't let that confusion take it out of your mind. So it's this really interesting message as Aslan gives her something to obey in that mountaintop experience where things are most clear. As we all know, in life, mountaintop experiences are wonderful, but they come and they go. Because we continue on with life. And in life, there's mountaintops experience, there's valley lows, and there's more mountaintop experiences. And we got to take those times of clarity, and we got to take what God tells us and hide that in our heart. Because when we go through those valley times, we are going to need to depend on that and bring back up the promises of God during those times of confusion. And going to that scene that I was talking about towards the end in the final confrontation when they're confronting the witch to set Caspian's son free, Prince Rilian, when they're confronting her, what is that final confrontation like? It's all about confusion. It's the polar opposite of the experience with Aslan. She throws some like magical powder in the fire. It fills the air with this sweet smell that confuses the mind. She takes an instrument and starts to thrum it. And so it's like this hypnotic doll thrum, and she's making the air so incredibly thick with enchantment and confusion. She's going the extra mile and confusing them about the reality they know itself just to keep them stuck underground. I see a showdown between the truth God has placed in us and what the enemy is trying to tell us, and it's our choice. Where are we going to stand? Are we going to take what was spoken to us in clarity and hold on to it? Or are we going to let it go and yield to the confusion? Because there was a moment where Jill started to yield to the confusion, and it says that it felt so nice to quit fighting. It felt so nice to just let go. But what's interesting is it shows the power of such confusion, because they spent a lot of time underground by this point. And the witch, through this stuff in the air, she started to convince them there was no overworld. There was no world where there's a thing called the sky. There's always a rock roof above you. There's no such thing as stars. And then they try to describe to her the sun, and she was like, really? What is the sun? Go ahead, describe to me the sun. They're like, we don't know how to describe the sun. Oh, that lantern that you have hanging off the roof right there, it's like that lantern. And see, the lantern gives light so we can see everything in this cavern. That's what the sun is like. But it just hangs in the sky and it gives light to everything everywhere. And then at this point, the air is so thick with enchantment that she stumps them with this question. Well, if the sky is this big, vast expanse and not a ceiling like the rock above me, then what does this sun, which is like the lantern, hang from? And the enchantment is so thick, it actually stumps them. And then she says, you see, when you try to think out clearly what this sun must be, you cannot tell me. You can only tell me it is like the lamp. Your sun is a dream, and there is nothing in that dream that was not copied from the lamp. The lamp is the real thing. The sun is but a tale, a children's story. And then Jill brings up Aslan. She goes, well, what is a lion? And they're like, well, picture a cat, but way bigger with a mane, but not like a horse's mane, but, like a big mane. And she's like, but you're doing the same thing. You're taking something that's real in my world, a little cat, and you're trying to make it into something bigger and brighter. No. And what's interesting is the deception kind of works because of what's in the air. And the way that it's broken is Puddleglum coming over to the fire and stamping it out with his foot. The sharp pain wakes up his mind totally. Stamping it out stops the spread of this incense, whatever it was she threw in the fire that was clouding their mind. Her anger, she stops thrumming the instrument, and suddenly their minds become clear because a clear-cut choice was made to believe the truth. What Aslan had spoken to them and what he had spoken to them in clarity, they chose to stand on that. I see God giving us something in clarity. God giving us the truth of his word and his promises to stand on. And then the enemy tries to cloud that issue and not only just make us doubt God, but really everything. Because if we could just live without that firm foundation and in complete doubt and confusion, then he could sow whatever seeds he wants to sow. And so that's what I see in that scene. And it's one of the reasons that I found it so incredibly powerful. One of the very interesting things about this story is really beat by beat. It's about following the 4 signs that Aslan gives. And it's about being in obedience to what Aslan said. They completely messed them up. I mean, through their disobedience, through their fighting, through their selfishness, through a myriad of ways, through deception entering in and confusion entering in, they continue to mess up the signs, yet they try to figure out and get back on course to re-follow the signs. Sign number 1, Eustace was to meet an old dear friend. This got messed up right from the very beginning when Jill was trying to show off by the cliff and Eustace fell and precious time was wasted, so they even had less time to gather their wits about them, less time to think this stuff through. They had less time to act because Jill was showing off there at the beginning. And maybe if Eustace was there and heard the signs and they landed in Narnia together, he might have gone, wait, Caspian was a king? That's a castle, that's a king. You know what? If I'm supposed to greet an old friend, let me waltz over there. And maybe Caspian would have said, Eustace, you haven't aged a day. Thanks for coming to find my son. Here's a whole bunch of help. But you know what? They missed it because they missed that first sign. But they didn't give up and they kept pursuing the signs. Puddleglum says this all the time. Aslan's instructions always work, period. When we mess them up, we just got to figure out, okay, what are we going to do about that now? But his instructions always work, period. I love this introduction to the Marshwiggles. The Marshwiggles are the most dour, sour-faced, depressing race you will ever meet. Every thing that Puddleglum says is so comically like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. It's hilarious. What's even more hilarious is when you read his character and just how he's always kind of looking at the worst side of things, and the kids are like, "Shh, you're just putting a bad face on it." It's Puddleglum's faith that keeps them on the right track. If they were without Puddleglum, they would not have followed the signs. They would have missed it altogether. It was Puddleglum who took Aslan more seriously even than they did. It was Puddleglum's faith that kept them on track. So here is the most dour Eeyore-type character that has been introduced, and he is the one that had the most faith to keep them on track. And so I thought that was a very interesting dynamic between Eustace, Jill, and Puddleglum, and honestly, he's one of my favorite characters in the story. Sign number 2, they were to travel north to find an ancient ruined giant city. This is the big thing that happens on their way there. They meet the Green Lady. They meet the witch, who they don't realize is a witch. They don't realize Prince Rilian is actually sitting on a horse wearing knight's armor right there. But it's interesting because she's looking at these sons of Adam and daughters of Eve here on this quest with a Marshwiggle, and she knows this is trouble. So she says, "Hey, you've been traveling for a long time," and they have. They spent 10 days, they're in the north now, and they're looking for this ruined city. They've been sleeping on the ground, it's been cold, and she says, "Hey, if you keep going this way, there's this castle called Harfang, and it's these friendly giants. Just imagine, warm food, hot baths, and soft beds." Instantly, they were deceived. Instantly, they were off mission. Puddleglum tried to keep them on mission, but they wouldn't hear it. Jill stopped reciting the signs because she kept reciting Harfang. She kept reciting warm beds, hot baths, warm food. That's what she was reciting. So she was thinking of her own comfort. Eustace was thinking of his own comfort. Puddleglum was trying to bring them back, but they weren't listening. And they found the ruined city in the snowstorm. And Jill even says later, if I had been thinking about the signs and not this place, if I had been thinking the right thing, we probably could have figured out why everything looked so weird in that snowstorm was because we had come upon the ruined city, and we would have known to look for the stone with the instructions on it. We would have known what to be looking for, but I just wasn't thinking. I was so bent on getting to Harfang. Over and over again, even Puddleglum says, "Hey, Jill, repeat the signs," and she went, "Oh, bother the signs." All she cared about was the comfort of Harfang. When they got to Harfang, yeah, they had a comfortable night. They had hot baths, they had a warm bed, they had some good food. Turned out it was talking beast of Narnia. It was like cannibalism in that world. It was disgusting. And then they realized those weren't friendly giants. The Green Lady sent them there just in time for their autumn feast, and they were to be the main course. The Marshwiggle and the 2 humans. Humans are delicacy. Ho 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 ho! So, in their quest for comfort, they almost had their own death. You shall find the writing on a stone in that ruined city, and you must do what that writing tells you. I mean, Aslan even came to Jill in a vision to show her what they missed when they were going through the ruined city in a snowstorm. The message under me being a good shepherd trying to shepherd them onto the right path. When they're in Harfang, they look out and they could see the ruined city. And right there on the ruined city is a message that says, "Under me." And they realize how much they've missed it. And they know they have to obey what that writing says because it's what Aslan told them to do. So they have to go through this process of sneaking out of the castle, escaping the giants that are on a hunt, and finding a way to get underneath that hill, to go underneath that ancient city and go underground. And they do. They find it, and they find that pretty easily. But then comes this next bit of confusion, right? Because the knight and the Green Lady that they met on the road, after some long time of traveling underground and the darkness, you know, running into like these like gnome-like creatures underground, they take them finally to where the knight is and the Green Lady's off doing something else. And they just blab out why they're there. And so the knight just laughs hysterically, goes, "All that you would think that message is for you. Listen to this. Though under the earth and throneless now I be, yet while I lived, all earth was under me." And the knight is casting confusion on them, and in a way unintentionally, because he's reciting from memory that basically that was one large boast that was basically put on the tombstone of an ancient giant king. And over the years, as stones were moved and things eroded, all that was left was the message under me. And he's like, isn't it the merriest jest in the world that you would think those words were meant for you? And of course, it casts serious doubt on all of them. But good old Puddleglum, he stands up for it and he says, there are no accidents with Aslan. He knew what would be left of those words, and he knew that would be left for us. But nonetheless, it cast that shadow of doubt. You will know the lost prince if you find him by this, that he will be the first person you have met in your travels, who will ask you to do something in my name and the name of Aslan. And it's interesting because it's not like the knight is intentionally throwing confusion over them, but the knight is saying, I'm a man bewitched. And so every night I have this bewitching hour where the spell comes upon me, I turn into a giant snake, I'm incredibly violent, incredibly vile and evil. And this silver chair is the thing that if I remain tied to it, it will bring me back to my sane mind within the hour. Oh, praise to the Green Lady who saved my life. But she's not here. Would you guys mind sitting with me tonight? And if I ask you to do anything, please don't do it. I mean, those are fearful words, right? So of course they're making promises to themselves like, we have messed up everything up to this point. There is nothing on this green earth that would compel us to loose him from that chair so that he could turn into this giant snake and eat us, so that he could remain this weird, crazy, bewitched dude and kill us. Yeah, we're not gonna mess up the signs that bad. Gosh. And then it turns out the enchantment was really the other way. He isn't this weird knight who is a servant of the Green Lady. He's really Prince Rilian, and the bewilderment was making him forget that. And for 1 hour a night, he's back in his right mind, and he has to stay in the silver chair, so the silver chair will cast him back into that lunatic confusion and that madness, into the obedience of the queen. And he says, please, please, in the name of Aslan, release me. Are you serious? So this guy just got through telling them how dangerous he is when his lunatic madness, when his fits come upon him. And if I should beg, please untie me from this chair. Don't you do it. But now he says, in the name of Aslan, help me. The final sign that reveals that this person is actually Prince Rilian himself. The very reason they came, the very person they came to rescue. Thankfully, they'd been back on the signs by this point. They'd been reciting the signs and saying the signs and had the signs back on their mind. So this sign came, and it didn't look at all like they thought it was going to look. It didn't sound at all like they thought it was going to sound. But nonetheless, because they were back on the signs, they finally recognized it when it came, and they obeyed the sign. And in so doing, they freed Prince Rilian, who grabbed his sword, turned around, and destroyed the silver chair, thus destroying the hold that the Lady of the Green Kirtle had over him all this time, and destroyed it. So he was set free, and Narnia was saved from whatever plans that the Green Lady, the Lady of the Green Kirtle, had for Narnia. They were set free because they recognized that last and final sign. And so when I look at this whole book, it just fascinates me because I feel like it's the picture of life where we have those clear experiences and we need to grab hold of the truth and hold on to it, because life has those dark times. It has those confusing moments. So to me, the message is the Bible. It's like those signs that Aslan gave to the children, because he said, take these signs and recite them. Say them before you go to bed. Say them when you wake up. Keep them on your mind. It's like the Bible. He has given us the truth. He's given us his word and his promises to stand on. And we need to keep his word and his promises in our mind at all times. We need to be saying them with our mouth. We need to be remembering his promises. And in those good times and in those clear times, taking his word and the truth of his word and hiding it like treasures in our heart. Because when those dark times come, when that confusion comes, we'll have that truth as a firm foundation to stand on. And then one of my favorite pictures in this book is at the very end, when all is said and done, and Jill is standing before Aslan again. All she could think about in his presence is all the ways that she messed up the signs and messed up from the beginning to the end of this journey. And as she's thinking about it, I love Aslan's response to her. He says this, think of that no more. I will not always be scolding. You have done the work for which I sent you into Narnia. And what I love about that is Aslan is not trying to condemn her or hold that stuff over her or hold her mistakes over her head and make her feel so bad for it. No, it's all forgiven. It's gone. You know, the truth is, Jill, Eustace, Puddleglum, they could have all given up. At any time, they could have given up. And there was Aslan giving Jill that dream and all that stuff, trying to just shepherd them back on the right path. But at any given point, they could have just quit and been done with it. But they kept on going. I love that picture because we're all human. So yes, we need to keep the word alive in our hearts as we go through those dark times and go through those times of confusion. But you and me, we're not perfect. We will stumble and we will fall. And the brilliant news is Jesus is not looking to hold that over our heads. He's not looking for reasons to smite us with lightning bolts or to condemn us. He didn't come to condemn us. He came to save us. So when we stumble, when we fall, when we make mistakes, the important thing is don't quit. Get up and keep going because Jesus is with us. He's not looking to hold that against us. He's looking to save us and to keep us going forward. He is the good shepherd and he wants to keep us on that path, and he will protect us, love us, and forgive us. So what did you think of The Silver Chair? Is this one of your favorite Narnia books? Let's talk about that in the comments. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for the next Narnia video I drop. Our movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. Like the last battle, man. The end of the world. Yeah, Narnia comes to an end. That's what the last battle's about. I'm looking forward to rereading that now and then bringing you a video about that. So, what's your favorite Narnia book? Let's talk about that in the comments. I'm Durbin. Thank you so much for checking out Durbania.